Okay, we're gonna get started. So this is the one, this is the pre-show I've been waiting for. So I got a bet with anybody who wants to take it. So we just talked about specifying BAS system, newer IP-based BAS systems for quite a while, for those of you who were in the last session. And for any of you in the space that are trying to sell more advanced systems, especially to the MEP community, you find it's hard to get acceptance right now, okay? And so you tell them all, you're like, oh my God, you guys, you're speccing systems that have no cybersecurity built into them. And you're putting them on the owner's networks that have infinite users and internet connections. You don't have encryption, you don't have managed switches, you don't have a firewall, you're not managing your network. What do you? So we tell it to the MEPs all the time. We're like, your liability keeps going up every year, and yet they struggle. So here's my bet. You ready? See this, BACnet SC? This is what's going to fix it. That's my bet. I'm hedging all my money on this because I think, Greg, we've tried everything, haven't we, to secure these designs, you guys. We have tried everything, and we still feel like failures. But this is it, folks. This is how we're finally going to bring some cybersecurity to the BAS industry. That's my bet. So, so for this one, Jim Lee is our commentator, and he is my foremost expert on the topic. So I'll turn it over to him. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks very much, Scott, and thanks to you and your company for running this forum for us. We really appreciate it, and to Ken Sinclair as well. So we're gonna make this a pretty informal presentation and mix it up. I might even call on our two experts up here, Carol and Ken, to even fill in for me on slides. We're just gonna mix it up all together. We welcome questions. Obviously, feel free to ask them. I would like, if you could state your name and affiliation and come up to the mic. If you do that, we appreciate that. Great. All right, I'll get started and dive in. So thank you, Scott, for that ringing endorsement for BACnet SC. It's been a long journey, and I'll talk about that as we go. I'll talk about it now. So we start with the invention of heating systems and air conditioning systems at the beginning of our timeline and move along through mechanical controls and pneumatic controls through the Arab oil embargo to the advent of DVC in 1983. Proprietary systems. We basically had no cybersecurity. In fact, we had no cyber. But when we started to have networks, people weren't very interested. It's just the heat and the air conditioning anyways, so why should I care about it? And ultimately, as time moved along, BACnet came along to fight the proprietary lock-in that controls manufacturers were having over owners. When that came along, BACnet was really designed prior to the internet. And if you look at what happened between 1995 and 2000, there was explosive growth of the internet. And it was very clear that information technology, IT, was going to dominate computer networking and connectivity. So in the BACnet community, we jumped on board that and brought along BACnet IP, which is an insecure UDP IP transfer form of BACnet. Became very, very popular and is frankly the most popular form of BACnet out there today at the tops of larger architectures. So it immediately came to mind that there was no security. In fact, there was a little head fake in the original BACnet standard towards talking about security, but really wasn't any. So people said, what we're going to do, we're just going to use IT techniques like virtual private networks and VLANs to secure these networks by building a perimeter or a moat around them. But really by the year 2004, people were saying, no, that might not be enough. What happens if somebody gets behind the wall? And so the BACnet committee, the best and brightest minds of our industry, got together and designed BACnet Addendum G. BACnet Addendum G secured BACnet systems all the way from MSTP all the way up to the enterprise. The only problem is it was the best and brightest minds of our industry that came up with it, not IT. And a lot of us that were in the space at the time felt that that was a terrible idea, that IT was going to dominate this. By the time we got it done, it would be stillborn because IT moves at 3-year intervals and we move at 30-year intervals. So by around 2009, we got together with Cisco and designed a BACnet variant, which was friendly to IT. And we were going to jam it through the standard committee and get it into BACnet. And we did, of course, with the usual AHR process that took us a decade. So BACnet Secure Connect was published in 2019. The CTO of Symmetrics, Jim Butler, chaired that committee for the entire time. And unfortunately, there were a number of pieces that were left on the cutting room floor in the effort to get it out. So we banded together with an industry group that Symmetrics led to come up with a standard to ensure that that BACnet SC would be interoperable. We're moving that into a special publication with AHR, which we'll talk about as we go. Okey doke, hit the slide button for me, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
There we go. So how did we secure networks before? Well, through physical security, certainly, and through, as I said, VLANs and VPNs. But, and of course, security through obscurity by having proprietary networks that no one knew how to do anything with. Next slide. What is BACnet Secure Connect? It's basically a standard we came up with, as I said, to use the security tools to use IT security tools to secure BACnet. Let's go with another one forward. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how it works. On the left side of the diagram is the existing architecture that we know and love well of unsecured BACnet that's been around for, going on 30 years now. And BACnet SC on the other side. So you'll notice that BACnet SC is a hub and spoke model. There is a hub in the center, and most messages need to go through the hub. When things are getting configured and organized, things go through the hub. If the hub were to fail, we have a failover hub. Once things are set up and operating, devices that are allowed to communicate peer-to-peer. And it uses TLS 1.3, so the same protocols that you would use, secure WebSockets, and any bank transaction you did with your browser. It's using that exact same technology to take those building automation messages and push them over that technology. Now, of course, because OT and BACnet, the kinds of things we do are not IT, there are a lot of other things we need to do, like broadcast messages that have to be worried about. And in fact, you'll all be happy to know that BBMDs are going away in BACnet SC. So
That's it. No pause.
So I mentioned we got BACnet SC out, and we needed to put this process together. So we convened the security architects from most of the companies in the industry to get together and figure out the rules of the road as to how manufacturers would build products to make interoperable cybersecurity beyond the SC standard. And what we did is we organized a top-down approach. Instead of the BACnet committee, which is often bottom-up, we started at looking at high-level cybersecurity problems, the NIST framework, the military risk management framework, and we started looking at security and controls and how we could apply this holistically to where we are with our industry and what fits and what doesn't. And out came this guide, which was published only a few months ago. And this has been submitted to become a special publication for AHR. Now, why would it be a special publication? The answer is when you touch IT, there are a lot of things that are not part of building automation. They're not part of the BACnet standard, but they're things you need to do anyways. So we needed to codify those in a document so everyone would know how to use those external structures in IT to get the job done. So I know you've seen quite a bit. Most of you that have been in this track have seen the Smarter Stack. I think that if you have not seen it, I highly recommend it. If you go to mondaylive.org, you'll find information on the Smarter Stack. It's a tool that we're all using now to talk about interoperability in buildings, cybersecurity. I used it just as a framework to show where this communication technology fits vis-a-vis the Smarter Stack. And I'm actually going to come back to it in a little while and show you specifically in the Smarter Stack where the technology we're working on fits. So now let's describe what this technology is all about. What it is it's a managed technology layer. So we're actually deploying security management over the top of BACnet SC, over the top of what's in the industry. So if you look down here at the bottom, these are traditional building automation devices, BAB boxes, unitary controllers. And on top of that, your manufacturer of product would have built BACnet Secure Connect. On top of that, we're building a management layer that sits on top that does a bunch of magical things. It helps you with certificate management. It helps you with collecting information that IT needs to see on the platforms above. We'll talk about that more in a minute. But it allows you to capture the data that you need to out of your control system to be a good citizen on the IT network. As the traffic cop supervising everything, we have an appliance, or what's also called a local network and security manager. The function of that device is to help with certificates and be an impedance matcher. If you will, we talked about how building automation has 30-year time constants and IT has 3-year time constants. How do we protect that installed investment from building automation from all the changes that happen in IT? And the answer is the appliance. So the appliance speaks whatever legacy things are going on out of the bottom, the control network, and it speaks to there's a cloud variant, which basically does the same thing over campuses or larger areas to help supervise things. There is a way to deal with legacy systems. So what if you have a large campus and it's already fit out with BACnet or other technologies, and you don't want to throw out $30 million worth of controls? The answer is you decide what you're going to secure first, deploy the secure technology on that, and you use these firewall routers, which are BACnet application layer firewalls, to screen between the secure and the insecure. So things that are southbound of that firewall can certainly source information, but they can't write typically above. So the top network can do anything it wants. The lower network can only do what it's told. Now, if you have third-party systems, for instance, you had Echelon, and you wanted to put that into the system, you'd have a third-party gateway, which would have that same managed functionality. And finally, I think this is the most important piece to understand. If we're collecting all of that information, and if your thesis is that IT will become dominant over this area in terms of monitoring the data and owning the responsibility for cybersecurity, as an industry, we work together to create what we believe IT wants to see. So instead of coming up with building automation and BACnet metrics, we're basically trying to feed IT things that they want to see, like syslogs, other things to feed their SIEM and SOAR tools, other things to feed their the tools that IT needs to use. But once again, that appliance in the middle is the gatekeeper that allows the older stuff to run, and so we can update that so that IT gets what it wants. So, all right, what's being managed? I got to read the bullets here because I don't write in the order. So first thing is device configuration and onboarding, right? So what happens, we've got a building the size of a convention center, and now every BAB box has a security certificate on it. How's that going to work? And the answer is that all of the building automation companies are building tools into their tool chains to help manage this stuff for you. So it's not going to be cold turkey. At this stage of the game, there is a lot to learn, but I've asked Ken to present some specifics. He's actually going to show you on ALC what it looks like to do security certificates. So we can, take this conversation from gaseous to condensed matter and really get into that a little bit as we go. So certificate management is a huge issue, and Carol maybe will speak more about security certificates, what a certificate authority is, how they come about, what happens if the darn things expire, which by the way they do. Who refreshes it? Are you gonna break your building automation system because you forgot to get your certificates right? All of these things have been considered for years, and we're working as an industry through how to build interoperable solutions around it. IT integration, I meant feeding of SIEM tools like Splunk. Asset management. I know that the experienced folks here that know that a lot of building automation systems, we don't know what's out there and even what it does half the time. But really exploring that, locating where things are in the building, locating its function, this becomes critical to keeping that software updated as we go along, patching security holes, etc. Routing firewall policies. We really want to have some kind of central management over the firewall policies on site. We don't want to have the technicians configuring each firewall for its own thing. So how do I supervise those firewall rules and keep those in track? Security configuration. Okay, one thing Johnson Controls can do BACnet Secure Connect on their own systems. What happens if I have a multi-vendor system? Can Carol's tools write to Ken's products and work that out? Well, that's the kind of stuff we're working on standardizing. Let's take it a step further. One critical thing with security is backup and restore, right? What if somebody bricks a whole site and you got to shut it down and restore it? Well, it's one thing if you're the controls manufacturer and you own the whole site. How are you going to back up and restore your competitor's gear? Stuff gets tricky, and that's what we're working on. I talked about integration, legacy devices, recovery, backup, and restore. I think I'm going to leave it there, and we'll get into this as we get a little deeper. But I wanted to show you my representation of the smarter stack as to what we really have covered. So there are a lot of functionality, and you can see some of the functionality is physical stuff and things that are beyond the scope. If you're going to put your networks in hard conduit, that's something that we're not specifying here. But these are the areas that we have covered, and a lot of other areas are organizational. And we really didn't stress this enough yet, but cybersecurity is a process, not a product or a project. This industry only knows how to do products and projects from a financing standpoint. And it gets really tricky because cybersecurity, energy efficiency, applications, analytics, these are all ongoing operating issues. And the industry has not figured out how to pay for that yet. And in our conversations with IT over long periods of time, they haven't wafted in with huge budgets to pay for this either. So we're somewhere in the middle of where the systems are going to break, and a 100-year-old contracting process is not going to be able to ascertain what the future holds. This building was built 30 years ago. How much cybersecurity was contemplated when it was built? None. The bond that paid for this building to be built was financed 30 years ago. Anyone coming up with a new bond to do cybersecurity? Probably not. Where's the money going to come from? These are the kinds of things we're working through now. So this is just an example of how the networks would segment and how basically a firewall would work. Not rocket science. Keep the bad guys out of the good stuff. So just in summary, what we've worked on over really the past 15 years as an industry is this model, series of rules, things that are part of the ASHRAE standard. And by the way, BACnet International is behind this effort. And right now we're working on BACnet interoperability building blocks, or BIBs, and profiles, which will take a lot of this information that's in this manufacturer's guide and codify them into the BACnet standard to make it actually easier for people to understand how to specify. What it will not do is codify a number of these things that are IT related and will stand alone in that separate document. So I think at this point, I'm going to stop blathering and turn it over to Ken. He's going to take us into the real stuff and show you some real screens.
See if I can make this work.
Good.
You grab the mic there, Ken.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna do.
There we go.
It's running.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at Automated Logic, we have, as Jim alluded to, we have already implemented BACnet Secure Connect within our system. Our primary user interface is an application called Web Control. We rolled out Web Control version 8 last year, and within version 8, we included BACnet Secure Connect capability in that application. And then we've also have rolled it into our building connection controller or router, if you will, that we have BACnet SC capability here to here. Jim alluded that one of the key components of BACnet SC is what's called this primary hub. That's this device here. That is the middleman, and that is what is used to authenticate between devices. So you'll authenticate between this BACnet SC device, the Web Control SC device, and then the BACnet SC hub. So you can see here, we have in the green, we have BACnet SC traffic actually occurring. But then we also have, as Jim alluded, we have legacy BACnet stuff. We have BACnet IP or traditional serial stuff, ARPANET or BACnet MSTP. So one of the key things with the BACnet SC addendum when it was first rolled out is we wanted to ensure that people that had already invested lots of money in BACnet controllers, they were not going to be put in a position where they needed to remove those. So I don't know how many engineers are in here, but the specifying engineers, you can still specify BACnet Secure Connect on a system today and maintain your legacy BACnet networks that are in the building when you're doing additions. Yes, sir.
Quick question. I've got a dumb question.
Sure.
That primary hub, that software in addition.
Oh, yeah. I should have discussed that. So a lot of people, when they hear the term hub, they think of that physical hub in the traditional IT sense. This is a software hub. So it is not a physical device. I can't speak for everyone, but I would venture to say most everyone is going to use a software type device. And then I'll come back to here. And then Jim had also mentioned there is the option of having a failover hub. It's not a requirement of the BACnet SC standard, but it is an option that's available. And I would recommend that you use those on critical mission type facilities.
Certificate management, is that an extra layer of software?
That is, so the certificate management happens within the user interface. And I'll show you some screenshots of how that looks.
While the BACnet SC primary hub is software, it does have to be on-prem, correct?
No, in this case here, so in Automated Logic's first rollout of BACnet Secure Connect, we did it with our cloud or hosted environment. So this is in the cloud and the primary hub is in the cloud. This would be in the building. We do have the option of putting this on-prem. It can be on-prem, and then the failover hub could be somewhere else. Yes, sir.
Keeping the BACnet IP networks and adding the secure networks, what does that mean for the cybersecurity of that whole system?
So what's going to happen? So two things I need to point out here. This green and yellow, this is still the same Cat 5, Cat 6 cable. The protocols are just running on that same cable. But what in essence is happening is you have BACnet Secure Connect to this point right here. Okay? And like Jim was mentioning, if someone were to, an unwanted person were to get into this side of the network, because they don't have a certificate, they're not going to be able to get past here. Or I guess I really should say they're not going to get past the hub. is going to be one-way type traffic. So you're secure from here up. Does that answer your question?
And even about the communication, I feel like there's a lot more in that it's still not being.
So think of BACnet Secure Connect as just another, it's another digital layer, if you will, of the BACnet protocol. It's using the TLS 1.3 encryption to talk across the same physical media layer, but it's using the encryption to communicate.
So say you have some sensor data on the unsecured portion,
Right.
getting routed into the secure area. I mean, that can be compromised and affect what you're seeing in a supervisor, for instance, right?
That is correct.
Yeah.
It can be compromised. So, you know, you would want to make sure that could not be written. You don't want anything that's going to have a serious compromise, but if you were to enter fake data there, you're absolutely right. So the answer is, if you want it secure, make everything secure. But since it's not practical to do that immediately, you pick and choose and you take those trade-offs as to what you're going to secure and what you're not.
So if you run it through a gateway device that encrypts the data, it will be secure?
The gateway devices are for non-BACnet things, but nothing's going to make it completely secure, but those firewalls are going to block most malicious traffic. You can't block spoofing a value that's made up, but you can block malicious writes or anything else.
Correct. So to Jim's point, and my advice to you would be, if you really feel like that particular area needs to be secured, then yes, my suggestion would be then you need to make that all secure connect. But if you're not, if you're in a position where this doesn't necessarily have to be secured all through here, then you could put firewall / gateway, segregate that aspect of the network. Yes, sir.
Got a question regarding the way in which the data flows and everything. You said you're doing away with BBMVs. So of course you're doing away with NEP or NPDUs. Are you also doing away with APDUs?
They'll still be there.
They're still there.
Okay, so they're
I'll get into a little bit more of the technical side of the stacks and stuff. We won't go all deep, but
Yeah, I tell you what, just in the interest of letting Ken get through his presentation, and, we definitely want all the questions, so keep asking.
I will move along. So this is, the creating and managing certificates. So there's a couple different choices. You need to work with the IT department. You can work with, they may have a method of creating their certificates, and you can use those. Automated Logic is adopted using software called Key Store Explorer. You can go online to get it, and we can use it to create the certificate authority and manage the certificate signing request that comes from the devices. One key takeaway that I really want everyone to hear is when it comes to certificate authority, is this is even mandated with the BACnet SC standard. The customer, the end user, owns the certificate authority. It's not the controls vendor. It's not the MSI person. It is the customer that needs to own that authority so that they can help manage that root certificate. So this is just the user interface that's within web control. So this is the portion that we're looking at from that original diagram. So this is just the web control connections page that shows you what the connection is, where it is. And then from here is when you get into the actual certificate management. So you can see the certificate, when it expires. And then as we move on down, now we're into the gateway. Actually, it should be the SC hub. Sorry about that. Same thing. You can see the certificate when it expires. One of the things that we have set up with our user interface with the certificate management certificates is we have put in alarming or notification processes that you can set what we'll call a cautionary. In other words, maybe you're 60 or 90 days out, it's user defined when a certificate expires. It gets notified the front end of the user, and And then as we get closer to that expiration period, maybe within 30 days, it now becomes red or an alarm or, hey, you need to take action. Please hear me on this. When the certificate expires, there is no grace period. There is no, what do we do now? That device will stop communicating. Plain and simple. So pay attention to the notifications you get with the certificates and when they expire. And then same type thing, once we get into the building router, we get the certificate, we put it in there, and then you can see the certificate information, the authority, the request, how it's signed, and who owns it. And that's part of the user interface. And I think that's it from my section.
Okay.
Great, thanks. So I forgot to introduce Ken. He's very senior in the business, was on the mechanical side, and he's basically a liaison between the field and corporate, the whole section of the country for automated logic. But a great resource on this. He was basically present at the creation of taking this thing to market with us, and please ask him questions out of band as well. And now for Carol LaMonaco. Carol has been at Johnson Controls for 38 years. She is the senior product manager for cybersecurity at Johnson Controls. And there's nothing that Carol hasn't done in this industry or at ASHRAE over that period of time. So you got really hard questions right there. All right, Carol, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Well, you can see I started when I was real pencil thin and had dark brown hair. So see what it does to you. Pardon me? Yeah. Anyway, so what I'm going to talk about is planning for these BACnet SE jobs. And I know a lot of people are like hesitant, like, oh my God, what are you guys getting us into? That you had enough trouble with BACnet over IP and MSDP and BBMDs. So I'm going to, give you guys some education, but I'm going to simplify it a little bit and ask you, when I get to these slides, to just think of the fundamentals and keep those straight, and you'll get along fine. And this is the type of thing, it's kind of like physics or something you had to take math. Every time you look at these pictures, you'll get a little bit more out of it. And after a while, I can't say when, but you'll get to be an expert on it, okay? So we're going to talk about this. What is this BACnet SC? You guys already been introduced to BACnet, so you know what the objectives were, right? To be an interoperable system, not to have someone come in and just say, you got to use my products, even though that's a pretty good thing to do. But you want to have interoperability, right? So other people can also add other products to your system. Okay, so I don't have to tell you, but I thought I would share just some stats. I mean, and I was looking for more up-to-date stats. So probably in a couple of months, there'll be some more. They're every day out there, but we all know that the cybersecurity breaches cost everybody money, right? Now we're in an industry, you could say, but I just have a 5-story office building. What's the deal? Well, maybe somebody's just going to get to your BAS system that's 30 years old or something, 25 years old, and they're just going to, be able to hack and turn off the heat in the dead of winter. So no one probably is going to die, but you might have to send people home, or, the business inside, at least the first 2 floors aren't going to be happy with you. But it's just an idea that they can disrupt your business. Now, on the other hand, let's talk about a hospital. And in a hospital case, you got the operating rooms, you got surgery going on, you got patients, you got that. So, it's not funny if somebody got to the system, hacked in, and turned off the lights, or screwed around with the set point in the operating rooms. Someone might have to stop operating because temperature is 78 degrees and it's supposed to be something lower than, around 60, 62. So you got to take it seriously, because when the bad guys look around, they're going to look around for the weakest link. They really are. And you just don't want to be there. So that's the whole idea behind this BACnet Secure. We didn't want to make it hard on purpose, but we do want to make sure we have secure. And we're using just building blocks that are already out with IP. So this diagram should look kind of familiar. Jim had, similar, very similar. And again, BACnet got approved in 1995 in San Diego. That's when the standard got approved. And manufacturers were developing and paying attention and came out with, our BACnet over IP eventually, over Ethernet, ARPANET. There's different data links that they could use, still in the spec today. And then they tried in 2004, as Jim alluded to, we tried with this addendum G. And I don't know, I kind of tore it apart with a couple developers. And if you think this is what we got today, if this is a little bit complex, they were given a certificate out to the maintenance guy, to the operator. So instead of one certificate per device, you had 4 in some cases. So rolling up to 2019, when we released the BACnet, is first called Addendum BJ, and then it got renamed, adopted into this standard as an Annex AB. And that's what we're implementing today. Now, because this is the BACnet standard, you got to understand there's some other addendums coming down the road. So Addendum CD made those cryptographic algorithms. I don't want you to get worried about them, but they made it so it's standard which ones, and that helps with interoperability. You say, why do I care? Well, it just helps when you hook up, a Johnson control system with somebody else's, and it's running BACnet SC. If they're per the standard, it'll be interoperable, okay? So finally, we're up to what we've been working on before. Now you got to remember, BACnet is going to continue to put out addendum, to put out changes to the specification, to the standard actually, to improve or enhance the BACnet SC, Secure Connect. And one of those ways, remember how Ken said, hey, don't let your certificates expire, right? That's a bad thing. We're giving you warning. Same thing with Metasys, Johnson Controls. I put some warning in there. You can put 180 days. It'll be in your event log. You can't miss it, right? It'll be on the screen. Your certificates are going to expire. However, I'll just say that there are things in our addenda, and maybe the vendors haven't implemented yet, where you can put down 2 certificates. You can put down an extra one so you can quickly flip to it. So, but the thing is, you got to pay attention to it, and you got to get that training from the vendor and understand that, right? So these aren't really weird things. Your IT department does it today. Your laptop's probably got oodles and oodles of certificates on there that you just don't even know about. Okay, so now I'm going to educate a little bit. Don't freak out. So, I did a box in the bottom, and I try to give you a row of some items to think about. There's no quiz at the end, but I want you guys to walk away with some of the differences. And you might say, I don't care, Carol, but yeah, just bear with me a little bit. So the whole idea for this data security is we use some of the IT practices, these secure web services. They've been around. Certificates have been around. And when you talk about certificates, it's called public key, information, PKI. So this is nothing new. It's all about certificates. And there's 2 flavors. There's the kinds where they're using 2 keys, and one is a public key and one is a private key. And that is what so big words. So look at the box on the right. It's called asymmetric cryptography, because that's what we use. We use a pair of keys, but they're different. And it's that difference, just like they used in your laptop. You might have the private key, but when I send my email to you, I got the public key there so you can open up and read it. Okay, I'm not going to give my private key away. So that's just how things are working. There was nothing new there. But the other thing is, when we talk about that network protocol, so I don't know if you guys are used to the ISO model. Okay, so remember there was 7 layers of that ISO model? Well, BACnet has their own stack, and I'll show you on the next slide. It's simplified. But anyway, at these levels on that stack, BACnet SC is using TCP. Before, IP is using UDP. So again, drop down to the next thing, application protocol. To the right, you can see we're using secured WebSockets. And that's what allows that lock to appear in your browser because they're using this behind the scenes. Network communication through routers. BACnet IP, you had to deal with that when you crossed subnetworks and you didn't want to do blast everybody with a broadcast. You did that BBMD so you could connect and then tell them the information. It was a forwarding message service. Well, we don't need that with BACnet SC. And then I'll show you a picture of what we mean by this spoke and hub topology. It's a virtual spoke and hub. And the last thing you're going to hear about this, probably already know, but there's going to be some nomenclature you just got to learn about. So where do I find all this information about the hub, the primary hub, the final, the failover hub, and the nodes? Well, there's going to be an object called a secure connect network object, that property object, and that's what that SC and PON is. And it's a little different, but it's going to give you a lot of information. So, kind of an overview. So I just want you to pay attention to that little diagram on the right. See if this works. This guy. This is the representation of the BACnet virtual hub and spoke. So you look at these circles here. They're called nodes. Okay, so there's like multiple layers. There's a node layer. That's like a BACnet building controller, a BACnet application controller, BACnet advanced application controller. If they're on the Ethernet, an Ethernet device, they could play the role of a hub. Of a node. Okay, the green circles. And there are some cool features about this thing, because if I want to talk to Ken, and he's a node and I'm a node, and if he has that on his controller ability, because it's kind of optional, but it's a cool thing, I can do a direct connect to Ken. Now, when we talk to each other, we've already talked to the guy in the middle, which is called P-Hub, primary hub. We've already talked to the primary, kind of checked in, made sure we all had that same signing certificate. So we can all talk together, we're trusted. And why are we trusted? Because there was a mutual check. I checked Ken, but in the hub, he checked me, he checked Ken. Everybody that's on there as a node were checked. Do you have a right certificate? Is it valid? What's, so it's signed by the same signing certificate. That's what's going on with that little diagram right there on the right. Now, this big orange circle to the right is the failover hub. So we were worried about single point of failures. So what happens is when you configure your user interface or your offline tool with all these vendors that have this, there'll be a setup where you say, make my network controller, ABC, the primary hub, and you're gonna make somebody else the failover hub. And all the other guys that you're hooking up to or talking to, they're gonna be the nodes. So these could be, again, we're talking about everything that's over Ethernet. We're not talking about NSPP. So that's this idea. So if you don't pay attention to anything else, remember that there's a node, there's a hub, and then I'll show you there's even something called a router. And again, when you can imagine I got, I don't know, about 10 devices, 10 nodes here. Well, what if I got a huge building with 1,000 BAV boxes, so many supervisor controllers, and a big enterprise workstation? Well, they're going to play different roles. Probably the workstation could be a primary hub. Again, it depends on the vendor, what you're using. And again, the neat thing about this, it's all interoperable. So when I say I've got BTL, BACnet SC products, you look and say, hey, well, can that thing be a primary hub? Can this other controller or workstation be a failover hub? And if I wanted to, I could integrate with somebody else, because I'm interoperable with another company's node or another company's failover hub. And again, they can be virtualized in the cloud, or they can be on-prem. So that's like kind of the basics, okay? Now, before I was talking about the stack, this is kind of how, when you say, what's the change? Well, in this layer here is the data link, the physical and the data link layers. And the new thing is this web sockets and BACnet SC, and the lock on it is supposed to indicate secured. Okay, so these are all existing things, but they've given you one more option in this data links area, and that's the new guy on the block, and that's what we're using. So you may not see this picture on your vendor's diagram because they're kind of baked into their own topology, their own network. But if I walk through some of these items here, like the other thing that's IT friendly about this is we went out and used the TLS 1.3. Well, that's new and it's more efficient. And it's kind of like the new thing on the block. You can still use 1.2, TLS 1.2 as a local matter if your IT departments don't want to use 1.3. Anyway, then the next section is just talking about more this concept. If this guy goes offline or something happens, all these nodes will go flip over here and you shouldn't see any disruption in the building. And when it's available again, they'll go back to this guy. So this is some of the things. And then as far as diagnostics, whether you're online or in a tool, you'll be able to, it doesn't matter much to you right now, but you'll be able to see, hey, what's the primary hub up online? Is it connected? So you'll get all this extra information there. And you can tell if there's direct connections going on. And again, for these guys, these green circles called nodes to talk to the primary hub or failover hub if it fails over, there's this thing going on called mutual authentication. And again, you got to have the same certificate from the same private CA, and it has to be a good, it can't be expired, and all those other things. So it's making sure that you are secure, because with this mutual check, I'm going to trust you, just like I trust Ken, he trusts me. So that's what's going on with this. Maybe these are concepts you've never heard about, or maybe you've heard all about these things. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew about that. So, when I talk to people, the first thing I hear is, wow, this stuff's complex. It is a little bit different than what you had. And most vendors, I'm sure, that are putting the products out there, they have a workflow diagram. They have this thing documented. So they're going to tell you, hey, these controllers and workstations can play a role as a node or a primary hub or a failover hub or both. Or maybe it's just a VAV box and it can only be a node. So you'll have to, get more familiar with that and then ask those questions. You'll see it when they lay out your job. And then the other thing is this PKI, this public key infrastructure, and you can hear it a lot. It's called PKI. And you just need to understand, with BACnet SC there, you started off using ECC certificates. Oh, what's so different about those? They're smaller, more efficient certificates. Generally, we've been using RSA ones in our larger devices. But again, just giving you some of those new terms so you'll be able to work with that when you have your first job. Then there was, like I said, other diagnostic things you can do, these messages. I gave you a quick, just want to go back one. Okay. Near the bottom there, that kind of information, that'll be useful when you have to diagnose something going on, right? Maybe the primary hub's down. Okay, or it switched during the night, you don't know why, but you see it in the logs. Click me forward. Okay. So that's about what I'm gonna, as far deep I'm gonna go. But you can understand from a field technician, if they've never been exposed to this, like what the heck's going on? So these are new concepts. Don't be afraid of them. There's a lot of classes at your vendor. can certainly train you on, and then there's some from BACnet International. I'm sure a lot of organizations probably find it on YouTube, you know. So anyway, just keep going. And here, the other thing I've been talking for the last couple of years was IT professionals. So I sought out looking for beta jobs, and I talked to some of the big IT guys. And it didn't take long once I explained what it is. I showed them like the 2 or 3 of these slides that I have on my desk. And they were like, you know, oh, that's different. Oh, okay. But as soon as I told them about the ECC certificates and how we manage them, and every device has got to do a mutual authentication, and it's virtual hub and spoke, they didn't have a problem with it. They did ask me some questions like, how the heck are you going to manage all these certificates? Things like that. So, and that was right on. I expected an answer like that. And the answer is we will have tools. There's some being worked on as we're talking. And like I said, there's some extra addenda you can use in your product line. And that'll allow you to put 2 certificates down there, and it'll help that when you do expire in 3 years. That's normally what the average time is. Now, some customers might say, give me a 1-year certificate. So you'll be warned by the system, and then you'll have to, you know, plan that upgrade, so to speak. So I got some feedback from one of our big customers that's planning like a several campus location, mostly in the US. And after they've, you know, gone through this a couple times to ask questions, they kind of like it, you know. So they like it because of the security aspect. Like I said, if you let your, you know, once you set this up and you let the certificates expire, then you're going to have an issue because they won't talk on your devices. So you got to catch it ahead of time. That's all it is. Now, the other thing we had another session the other day. There was a young guy, younger than me anyway. He was a service technician. And, you know, he asked a really good question. He said, hey, well, what if I'm going to propose servicing that building? Can I just take my old tools and jump on this BACnet SC network? And the answer is, well, if you don't have certificates on your client or access with the tools for that job, you aren't going to get on that job. You got to go ask the facility manager or somebody, you know, hey, what do I need to do my work? It's a little bit different, but in the name of security, that's why it was done. So in conclusion, I went over some of the concepts. I agree with people. I can't disagree. It's new. If you've never been exposed to PKI certificates and all this stuff, it is a little complex. But what I'm telling you is to start with the fundamental building blocks, like what's a node, what's a hub. And I didn't get into a lot of it, but when you join those networks together, in between there's a BACnet. So right here in this picture here, you can join multiples of these together. And that could be like 5 buildings on a campus, 30 buildings on a campus. And you would, between that primary hub and this node, these nodes, you would put a BACnet SC router between the two. And so you would have a lot of these circles, they're connected. So again, it's very, this extends to most everything. I mean, you could have one job with 300 devices, you could have one job with 1,000. It's up to you to kind of analyze, do I need a single primary hub and failover hub pair, or should I cut it up and so that I have 5 of these BACnet SC systems, virtual hub spoke systems, and then I'm going to connect them through these things called BACnet SC, the BACnet SC routers. So three layers, the node layer, the hub layer, and if you have a router, the router layer. So it's really simplified. And you should know what you can do for each thing. And you can have hybrid systems. You can have still BACnet IP and MSDP running. But again, somebody asked a very good question, what happens there? Well, there are some application firewalls that we're going to be releasing. People in that know BACnet SC, they are going to be releasing some application firewalls. Depending on your implementation, you could have a controller that would just read a value, stuff it into a memory, and then just read the value, never allow that message to go on the other side. So that was a very good observation that if you have a non-secure side, how do you prevent it from going over to the secure side and potentially, making it the whole thing insecure? So from the IT, they liked it. When I pointed out, hey, BACnet was just not making this up. All these things are available on the Internet Engineering Task Force. These RFCs are being used by BACnet to create this. So it's not like we're making up all this stuff. They really are standards out there. And so hopefully it'll make things more secure. We'll see. It'll be interesting to take a picture in a year and keep going up to 5 years and see if we make the right decisions. But what I am happy with, at least the IT departments are learning more about BACnet. They're going to give it a chance, and they like what they see. They're pretty impressed with the design. So I guess with that, does anybody have any questions? Yes.
So certificate authorities, want me to come up?
Yeah, please. Sure. No.
Charlie, you're gonna have to go sit down. We'll put the mic up here.
Good.
So certificate authority, right? It's gonna be something that we're gonna utilize that's not gonna come from maybe automated logic or Johnson controls, correct? It's gonna be something that maybe the owner's IT department chooses, or maybe one of your companies would recommend.
That's right.
Is that correct? And how that works?
That's correct. And one other thing that I want to point out is when most people hear certificates, they start thinking dollar, I gotta pay for that. I might have to pay to renew those certificates if I use something like Digiserve or VeriSign. You don't have to do that. You should be able to use the tools that we can provide to be able to generate and handle the certificate authorities.
So, but are you guys gonna produce tools?
Yeah. So let me say, so depending on the vendor, they will have the tool embedded that generates basically self-signed. It's a private CA and self-signed, or there's options where if you're dealing with GSA buildings, they aren't gonna let you put self-signed in there.
Right.
So there's a method where you create the request, which is called a CSR file. The tools create that little file, and then they zip it together and they say, okay, send it off to the GSA IT guy that I'm working with, and hey, can you sign these? And you tell him you need this certificate, this, and he sends you back a file, an email, or whatever, a security path maybe. And then your tool for BACnet SC will be able to take that file and figure out where to put those little keys, which are nothing more than files, in the controllers.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then it'll warn you online or offline, hey, those are going to expire in 3 years, so I'm going to warn you 180 days. And you'll have to do that again. Then there's other addenda for ASHRAE where they allow you to put, another CA or another certificate down there, so you got the backup ready, so to speak. Okay?
Back there first.
Follow up on that one. So you're saying that BACnet SC requires that a non-self-signed option for
It only says one thing: you can't have a public CA. So the intent here that BACnet devices are really not supposed to be publicly seen on the internet. That's the whole premise.
Right.
But you will see different implementations. Yeah.
Right up here.
So with the certificates, it sounded like that you don't have to connect to each device to install the certificates. There's a tool that will do all of them on the network.
Yeah, most vendors have it baked in, from what we could tell, 5 or 6 of us.
I'm going to say it's going to depend on the vendor, and I would also say that that's something that's going to be evolving and changing.
Yeah. But they have this tool, and it'll be able to tell you, it gives you a summary. Hey, you got all these devices, 300. They all can run BACnet SC. And then it'll give you a point of, do you want to send these request files, which are just going to bring up and say, I'm device A, device B, I need a certificate. And then you send that off to your IT guy, customer's IT, and then they'll sign it, so to speak. and then you'll import that back in your tool.
Right here first. I'm sorry, is there a follow-up? Okay, right here.
Yeah, I mean, this is touching on some of my question. I guess my initial question that I was building when you were talking is the role of the hub, right? So you have this PKI, no public CA is great. So the college, whatever, is going to have their CA. The hub is now hosting these private keys in the CA.
Nope. It's kind of, okay, the hub makes sure that everybody who wants to connect is from the same CA and has a valid certificate, and there's a couple other checks. So it's doing the checks. It's kind of like, I'm not going to allow you in my bar unless you're 21 or older.
Right.
Right?
So he's not signing the CSRs.
No, the hub is not signing.
Okay.
But he's enforcing the rules.
Authenticating.
Yeah.
With the
node.
Right.
The node and the hub are authenticating each other. It's called mutual authentication.
Yeah. So, right. So if this hub goes down,
right,
they're not talking because they can't authenticate to each other.
No, not unless one of the certificates expired or something like that, something unusual. So if the hub goes down, the primary hub goes down, and you had a failover hub, which you probably want to do, then the if they were talking, they would still operate because they had, when they failed.
Right. That's what I'm curious about, because your certificates on your nodes are still valid.
Right. But the issue comes up if I try to bring on another node to that network and there's no hub to do the initial checks.
Right.
What's going to happen?
Okay.
I think the other question you're asking is, if the primary hub fails, that controller will not be able to see that controller or communicate with it, but that controller should continue to operate in whatever state it was in.
But not be able to communicate peer-to-peer?
That if peer-to-peer communication had been allowed and authenticated before the hub went down, yes, they should still be able to communicate peer-to-peer.
Okay. So in that regard, this peer-to-peer authentication process, thinking about back at MSDP or IP, typically a node can be a server or client and serve up read, write data. Pretty easily you scan the bus and it's all there. But when you're setting up peer-to-peer with SC, you're doing that through your tools and the hub.
Right, and you're authenticating to the hub.
Right, so the hub is allowing this peer-to-peer communication. Without that, you're not going to be able to do just a quick peer-to-peer setup between nodes. You need that interaction with the tools.
Can you folks in the back hear the questions, or is this going one way? You can hear them? Yeah, all right, we'll just keep going the way we are. Right here, Andrew.
You said the has to be the hub enforces that has to be one CA. Is that true, or can there be trust flow on the CA?
But the original without CC, there has to be that trust between that CA and all the nodes.
When she says CC, she means it's
CA.
CA. I mean, right. Okay. Sorry.
So it has to be one CA. It can't be a CA that's trusted by another.
Right.
It's one level.
One level up.
One level up. That's it.
Now, if you had a router in there, so I had this BACnet over here, SC network in here, and there was a router in between, and who knows where the data came from, could have been 2 hops. It will be the last guy, you can't really say, where did that data come from? Did it come from the network, one above? That's all I can check.
Okay, one in the back.
Yeah, so let's say I stand at my own private CA. What happens if I ever lose that?
What do you mean by lose that?
Like I download the CA software.
Yeah.
I'm running it on the server. And that's,
Okay, well, let's just say you set up a job. You had your own CA, you issued your own certificates, you set up that job. And then maybe you forgot and you.
it was on a piece of hardware.
So everything will run. The thing that will come up is when they start to expire, what are you going to do? So the thing would be, they can read up some information from what's down there. The vendor can in their tool if they follow the standard. And then the question is, okay, well, what are you going to do now? Are you going to still stand up another CA and certificates, or are you going to go to your customers? See what I'm saying? So then it depends.
Good. So just for a break in the questions for 1 second here, I see a lot of gray hair or no hair in the room. And one of the things we've been worrying about as an industry is how we're going to onboard some new talent. Melissa, would you raise your hand for her? It's Melissa Boutwell. She's been working with the Department of Labor to instantiate apprenticeship programs for this kind of cybersecurity training for our industry. So I would suggest you speak with her after class if you have any interest on where people that are going to fill these jobs to work on these technologies are coming from. So any other questions in the interim?
Just got to remember 3 things, right? The node, the hub, and the router.
So,
Scott?
so is there a chance we're going back into a proprietary world with different vendors, different CA, you know, I mean.
No, that's why I said it is imperative, and it's even part of the BACnet SC standard. CA, the certificate of authority, belongs to the customer, not the vendor.
Does that run counter to the self-signed thing? Was that earlier though?
No, if it's self-signed, the customer still gonna own it.
Right.
The customer still owns the certificate of authority, not the vendor.
Melissa.
Melissa?
So how is that an opportunity to memorialize this among the owner community and also assist with some of the procurement challenges and making sure some of the rates get done?
I think we're working through that still.
Yeah. So the first thing is education, and then getting products out there, because there's several vendors. Green Medicus, right, from Johnson Controls, at release 12, we deployed this. So you have an option even today, right? And there's a tool to help you with those certificates. You can go to the customer, you know. So it's out there. There's a workflow that's a little different because you gotta know what you're gonna do with these certificates. You can't show up on the job site with your controllers and put them all online if you're gonna run BACnet SC. You gotta have your certificates.
So one of the things that, and thanks you very much for your contributions to the standards that we're using. I know y'all work a lot of hours and they contribute to education. But that roles and responsibilities section that's in Division 25 that's so important, we embedded that in the training, your leadership, but it seems like there's an imperative to also take a slice of that out for the owner.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of responsibilities for cybersecurity vests with the owner. And we haven't even talked about a lot of the other use cases that were contemplated. Like what happens when the owner goes bankrupt and the certificates go away and the building needs to be sold by a bankruptcy court. How do you recover it? You know, what happens when things crash? All kinds of edge cases that come up here because you're locking stuff down securely under.
Just another question on this, like trust flow, which is like the beauty of the PKI infrastructure and all the work that's been done to it. I know this is a vendor specific thing, but do most of the vendors tools allow the CA that you're managing for the customer to be signed by a customer?
Yes.
Yes, either way.
Okay. So then your application firewalls, the customer side, can still inspect traffic or do everything.
Right.
In the blue back here.
Are you going to ensure that the installer actually follows that and doesn't use the CA to hold the customer hostage?
Good point. I mean, all you can do is train the customer, you know, when you do install and someone comes behind you to service. And, but it's in the spec. It's, you know, it's there that's the intent. Yeah.
So other questions? So if you want to get a hold of this manufacturer's document, I have about 80 of them over at the booth in the Building Automation and Control Showcase, this thing that's going to become the ASHRAE special publication. Happy to give them out to you if you come over there, but couldn't carry them over here. It's 25-minute walk and they weigh a lot. So what's your booth number? What is my booth number? I should know that. Seems to be 5359.
C, right?
Building C. It's the Building Automation and Control Showcase. So happy to give those out. So there's a lot of information. Carol, did you have a slide in there with references somewhere?
Yes, I did. Can you, keep going?
Do you want to go over the references? Because I think that's really important for people.
So when you guys, so I have a list of references here, and these can be found in the BACnet standard. So again, when you were talking to those IT guys or customer with IT, and they say, "Wow, who made this up?" You know, it's based on all of these Internet IETF RFCs, requests for comments. These are all standards. So, you know, we're talking about the ECC, that's like third from the bottom. It'll talk about those ECC certificates. Probably the IT department's heard of them, but never implemented them. So, you know, that's one thing to use. And then just, you know, third from the top, what is WebSockets? So it's there. And I guess what our challenge is develop some educational programs. The vendors have documentation, they have the workflow there. And you just need to start somewhere, you know, to start with Node, Hub, and routers. You'll have it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, one more question on the back.
Can we get a copy of the slides?
That's Scott.
Yeah, thanks for that. So all the presentations, the slides you saw, they'll all be available on automatedbuildings.com. So hopefully y'all got some good information. Can I just add something? Sure. So these are very smart people, and I'm sure they're scaring the crap out of a lot of you. And I get it, because I got people around me like, hey, like my sales guy here, he's like, no way, dude, no way. But unfortunately, the cybersecurity risk and the liability of it is much greater than having to figure this out. And while certificates may seem like we're going to be kind of hard to manage and this and that, it will. It'll be a little bit crazy at first, but we do it now, right? For those of you using Niagara, certificate management's already built in. A lot of you should have some knowledge built for your tax will already. So it's not completely new to the industry, as most of you know. And unfortunately, we as an industry have to get updated and change because of the inherent risk of not doing cybersecurity. So somebody asked earlier about why, like if it's already on BACnet IP, for the last 20 years, folks, we've been putting BACnet IP on people's networks. So we have to go back with something that probably it makes sense to go back with BACnet and kind of fix a lot of that. So yes, those BACnet IP to BACnet SC routers, you'll be able to go into your old projects and simply add those to add that security that IT is looking for from you when you're on their networks, right? So and then Carol just showed this stuff. This is so good. So when you go in front of the IT departments and they ask about BACnet SC and some of the foundation and where it comes from, these are the types of things that you will now have as ammo to keep yourselves, you know, essentially protected from the IT departments that you work for. So just adding a little business to the conversation, and that was great, you guys. So.
Good. Well, thank you very much for your invitation to have us here, Scott. And thanks everybody for listening. A lot of this work is open, volunteer. You can get involved if you want. If you don't, you can run from it. But that said, we're happy to entertain any other questions at any time. And feedback, you know, as we roll this out as an industry, you know, it's complicated enough that we might not have gotten everything right the first time. But the one thing about the ASHRAE process is it's just going to keep coming until we get it. So, thank you.
And I will say one more thing. I welcome you. Go to the Metasys booth, go to the other booths that say, show me the BACnet SC stuff. And then ask them, what's a hub? What's a node? What's a router?
Do you want us to test them for you?
Yeah, put them on the spot.
Thank you very much. Thank you, guys.